Everyone, how's it going? This is Richard, and welcome back to another weekly watch list video sponsored by MarketSmith. This week, I'll pretty much just be talking through a bunch of charts that I'm kind of watching. Obviously, the overall market conditions are extremely negative as of this moment, and many of these aren't buyable immediately, but they have caught my eye and they're showing something or in groups that are overall pretty strong. So I think they're worth paying attention to. As we go through, let me know your thoughts on these charts down below in the comment section. And of course, if you do enjoy this video, please go ahead and take the time right now to leave me a like down below and subscribe if you haven't yet and want to see more videos just like this one, as well as interviews, tutorials, all that good stuff. So just take a moment to leave a like and subscribe, and let's go ahead and dive right in with ENPH. Actually, before that, I do want to just bring up a chart of the overall NASDAQ composite and make sure I emphasize that we are extremely negative in terms of the overall trend. We're below all the key moving averages. We're potentially oversold, and I kind of talked a little bit about that in my stock market outlook video, which will be linked down below in the comment section, as well as popping up right now. But right now, it's not the time to be buying breakouts, and just kind of use this watch list as a reference point, a gauge of the overall market health. Or if you're a more kind of active trader and like to play those short-term bounces, you can do that as well. With that said, let's move on back to my watch list and start with a few solar names. So ENPH has been super strong. I think FSLR is the leader, but this is kind of second in command. We're right near that 50 SMA. We just barely undercut this prior level and held, but we are kind of in a short-term down cycle as of this moment. I'd love to see maybe a few days consolidation, maybe undercut and rally once again, and then a push up here from these kind of fast moves to the downside can, it can kind of lead to fast moves to the upside once again as it recovers. If the market comes through as well, that would be a big push. So you can kind of buy it very quickly, managing risk at the swing low. But there's no harm in waiting for it to kind of move back up to 300, consolidate again, contract, and then buy that kind of higher low spot as well. So however you want to play it, you can, or we'll just have to see what happens because there's no need to predict. We just have to let the basically market speak to us. So that is ENPH. FSLR is the next one. This is a little bit stronger. You can see we're holding that 21 EMA, but I love to see a base above kind of 120. Going over to a weekly chart, you can see that that pretty much lines up with this prior top. So I'd love to see a consolidation of a few weeks as the market kind of figures itself out, and then a breakout on big volume through these prior highs. That would be fantastic. You might feel like it's come a long way, but these type of moves on volume, these gap ups are often the beginning of a longer term move. So we'll have to see whether this stock can hold as well. As I said, I'd love to see it consolidate for a few weeks, let that 50 SMA kind of catch up to price, and then see it take off once again through 140. So that's definitely a name that I'm watching pretty carefully. And we'll have to see how things develop here. Fundamentals are a little bit lacking, but the price action to me is just a standout and even stronger than ENPH. Moving on, we've got some biotech. This is the other area of the market that's been extremely strong. I think the charts in this group looking this weekend were stronger than solar, and this stock is acting pretty well. Obviously, it has to stick above here. I'd love to see a move up through the 50 SMA on volume and challenging this 296.14 pivot, and eventually get to that 300 level, consolidate, contract, and then you could buy that breakout, managing risk right at this prior swing low, and buying it through this pivot. Ideally just under this all-time high pivot of 305.95. Great earnings and sales. You can see super strong earnings, plus 999%. Estimates are pretty good for this year, a little bit lacking for 2023, but you've got two high-quality funds invested into this stock. Moving on, we've got SRPT, another biotech. Keep in mind with these biotech names, they are extremely volatile. There's news risk as well, so play these carefully, and they can, gap down 40% on you in one day. So just manage risk with stop losses as well as position sizes. This has been super strong. You can see this nice move up on volume. Now it's a little bit wider and loose. You've got this gap down, which I don't like. It's a little bit volatile, but you have to keep in mind that the overall market has been extremely volatile as well. And the overall relative strength line is increasing. And I like how it's holding that 50 SMA. I'd love to see it kind of tighten up, kind of produce a short-term pivot. And then you could enter right here, managing risk either at these lows or this prior low or the 50 SMA. Moving on, we've got NBIX, another kind of biotech that's been acting pretty well. You can see this is a leading group as of this moment, and it is holding the 50 SMA as well as this prior pivot pretty nicely just above 100, and is pretty much ignoring the overall market health. You can see the relative strength line is increasing even as it's just kind of going sideways drifting back into the 50 SMA. A little bit short-term negative these 2 days here, but a nice hammer candle on Friday. So one to watch to see if it respects that 50 SMA and kind of rebounds and moves back towards the high of the short-term consolidation. Moving on, we've got REGN, another kind of a larger cap biotech that's acting well. Nice move up here. I'm not sure if this was earnings. We are below the high volume close here, but not too much damage being done, especially given the market conditions. You can see the relative strength line is actually increasing as the stock is pulling back. That's showing that this stock is showing relative strength. And I'd love to see it get back above 700 and challenge that HVC, which also lines up pretty closely with this line right near 700. So that is RGN, another kind of bigger cap to watch here. I like the big volume move and then this consolidation pullback on lighter volume. Moving on, we've got CYTK, a little bit of a smaller cap here. You can see this isn't quite as liquid, but it's holding above that 50 SMA, that key 50 level, and is a little bit volatile, but is acting pretty well considering the overall market conditions. Overall relative strength line is increasing. RVNC, another kind of smaller cap biotech, definitely a little bit more speculative here, pulling back into the 21 EMA, a little bit too sharply for my taste, but this is just kind of the character of the stock. Big moves up, pull back, and then another big move up. So we'll have to see what happens. I'd love to see volume kind of calm down a little bit, maybe a big shakeout above the 21 EMA, and then move back through 25. Akero Therapeutics, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Huge gap up on enormous volume, then going pretty much sideways. You can see relative strength line is holding up well considering the market conditions. But once again, this is a little bit more speculative, and this could definitely use a little bit more time before it's ready to push up. And if the market would turn around, that would help this immensely as well. And you can see this is very speculative, no earnings, no sales, nothing. You do have one high quality fund invested into this stock. Moving on, we've got RYTM, which is definitely negative on Friday. I definitely see this candle, but it's holding above the 50 SMA as well as this prior low. So I'd love to see it kind of consolidate here, firm up, and then move back towards the high of the space. I don't like this type of kind of failed breakout here. That's definitely a red flag. But considering the market conditions, I think it's worth at least having on your watch list and seeing how it acts if the market does pull through and restart some type of short-term rally. And you do have really nice sales growth with this name. But once again, you have to be careful with these biotechs. They can be extremely, extremely volatile. Moving on, we've got LW, a slower mover here. A lot of the defensive type names have been acting pretty well and is pulling back kind of towards this prior pivot under the 50 SMA, but this is a pretty controlled pullback here. Decent earnings growth expected for this year and the next, and the relative strength line does not lie. Overall RS rating of 96. So a slower mover, if you want to trade something and you don't want it to be going all over the place, you don't want to be trading biotech, this is potentially an option. I'd love to see it contract a little bit. Looks like an inside day on Friday. So you could basically play that inside day and up just below the 21 EMA, but I wouldn't mind it pushing back towards 80, contract again, and then that would kind of trigger a kind of multi-week pivot right here above 80. Moving on, we've got GIS, another very exciting growth stock here. Of course, I'm being sarcastic here, General Mills. But it's making all-time highs, I believe. Actually, let's go over to a weekly chart. Yeah, it looks like all-time highs in a bear market, just above this prior peak here. So it's acting well. Gap up on earnings, slight gap up, consolidating now, and we'll have to see what happens if it can push through this HVC. Just a longer term uptrend here. This is kind of a grinder. So once again, not going to be a high flying name. But if you want to trade something, you can trade this, and it does produce the occasional big move here. So definitely an option worth having on your radar. Wingstop as well, moving off the bottom above that 200 SMA. I'd love to see this curl up under price and for this to basically form a base here under 150 and then break out on large volume. That would be the ideal scenario. But I like how this is acting overall. This pullback is on lower volume, pretty orderly. But I do think this needs a base, and this just want to have on my radar a nice sponsorship as well, though you do see some funds decreasing their position. So that is Wing. And you can see decent estimates for this year and the next, and retail restaurants overall have been reasonably strong. HQY, you can see it's right below this prior level here. We had a nice hammer candle on Friday. Fundamentals aren't great, but the overall chart is strong, holding that 21 EMA. And looking at a weekly chart, you can see that this is a pretty nice base here. And this key level has been, tested a few times. And if we can finally break through that on volume, as you can see nice volume coming in, that would be constructive and basically start a stage 2 uptrend here in HQY. Wolf, this is a recent gap up here. Really strong estimates for 2024, which I love. Great quarterly sales growth as well. And it kind of got hurt last week. You can see we broke this kind of frozen rope here all in one bar. That's why you got to be careful here. But nice hammer candle on Friday, kind of respecting the low area of this gap up. And I love to see this kind of form a base here under 125 and eventually break out on volume once the overall market turns around. But definitely a name I think is worth having on your radar. You can see one high quality fund just starting a position, and overall, I think a stock worth having on your watch list. Lastly, I believe this is lastly. Oh, we've got one more after this. We've got WWE. Once again, not the fastest mover, but consolidating, holding up reasonably well, right under that 50 SMA. RS rating is a 96. RS line is increasing nicely, and just a stock worth watching. You've got decent quarterly earnings growth. You can see it's declining each quarter or decelerating here, but you do have decent estimates for 2022 and 2023. Lastly, we've got AMPS, Altus Power, and this is definitely a smaller cap name. I think the dollar volume looks like only about 5 million, so a little bit thin here. Institutions can't really invest in this. You can see 111 are in there, but it's not going to be one that Fidelity can go into. But it's been super strong off the bottom here, holding that 21 EMA. A little bit volatile now, but I love to see a volatility contraction. Maybe we get a shakeout under the 21 EMA. It tightens up for a few days, forms a pivot, and then you can manage risk right at that swing low. But definitely a stock that's super strong. And for the short-term swing traders out there, or even day traders, if it sets up a nice pivot, you can get a nice move intraday on this type of stock. And you do have really nice estimates for this year in 2022. So that's pretty much it for my watch list. I think my focus is kind of on these top few names here, the solar names, as well as the kind of bigger cap biotechs. But I threw a few in there that might be interesting to some of you. Let me know your thoughts on these down below in the comment section. What are kind of your top 3 from this list, and what are you watching next week? Once again, the overall market is very negative. We just have to wait and see what happens. We are in a bear market, so manage risk accordingly with the amount of exposure you've got on, as well as stops and position size. So thanks so much for watching. Leave a like if you did enjoy, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Take care.